All right, today we're doing lesson 1-5, comparing decimals, and the I can statement is I can compare decimals to the thousandths. The solve and share, the lengths of the three ants were measured in a laboratory. The lengths were 521 thousandth of a centimeter, 498 thousandth of a centimeter, and 550 thousandth of a centimeter. Which ant was the longest? Which ant was the shortest? And how can we use structure to compare and order the decimals and tell how you decided? So right here we have a place value chart for you to take a look at. And what I would do is underneath the chart, I would list the ants in order. So let me scoot down a little bit. Or I would just list the ants and then we can put them in order. So let's place them in the place value chart. So the first ant was 521 thousandth of a centimeter. The second ant was 498 thousandth of a centimeter. And the third ant was 550 thousandths of a centimeter. So when we are lining them up in place value, it's much easier to see which is the longest and which is the shortest. Starting from the largest place value, there's nothing in the ones place. So let me change colors here so we can see what I'm talking about. There's nothing in the ones place. So they're all the same or equal in the ones place. So then we go to the next largest place value, which is the tenths place. The tenths place. And which one we're looking for the longest and the shortest. So right now we can tell what the shortest one is because we have a 5, a 4, and a 5. So the second one is going to be the shortest. And when you look at the numbers, you know that 498 is smaller than 521 and 550. So we can get rid of that one. So now we're going to compare the first one and the last one. So they both have a 5. So now we need to go to the next largest place value, which is the hundredths. And the first ant has a 2 and this one has a 5. So this one is going to be the longest. And if you looked at them as ordinary numbers, standard numbers, you know that 550 is bigger than 521. So we need to put things in place value order in order to compare them. Don't just count on your eyeball getting it right, because sometimes your eyeball can trick you. So you really need to write them, list them in your book or on a piece of paper if you're doing the quick checks. Always have a piece of loose leaf paper out or a whiteboard to show your work and work through the problems if you're using the computer. So if we're going to put them in order from least to greatest, the smallest one we said was 498 thousandths of a centimeter. The middle one would be 521 thousandths of a centimeter. And the largest one would be 550 thousandths of a centimeter. Don't forget to do the look back. That's a good way to check in to see if you're understanding what you're doing. And if you are, if you're moving on and you are doing your work in your book only, you can follow along with me here. What I'll be reviewing now is the next page of your textbook, which is the exact same thing as the video in visual learning. And this lesson is called Comparing Decimals. So you can watch the Comparing Decimal video in visual learning, or you can continue on with me. And as you can see, we're having some wonky trouble with Savvis today. One of the reasons why I detached the Savvis from Google Classroom was to try to see if that was going to help solve some of these problems, but we're still having issues. So I'm going to refresh my computer and see if that helps. There we go. All right. So this is the same material that's covered in the visual learning video. Scientists collected and measured the lengths of different cockroach species. Which cockroach had the greater length, the American or the Oriental cockroach? So this is comparing decimals using a number line. And comparing decimals is like comparing whole numbers. We just get them all lined up and We compare them just the way we compare whole numbers. So following the steps, line up the decimal points, start at the left, compare the digits of the same place value. So in this case, we have 2 3s. So we know they're equal in the ones place. So now we need to go to the tens place, the tenths place, and we can see there's a 5 and a 4, and that's where the digits become different. So we're able to say that this guy is smaller than that guy because 4 is smaller than 5. It doesn't matter what's in the hundredths and the thousandths place. Right now, we're comparing the tenths place. So we know that 5 is bigger than 4, and 5 tenths would be bigger than 4 tenths. So 3 and 576 thousandths of a centimeter is larger than 3 and 432 thousandths of a centimeter. Down in the bottom in the convince me, Valerie said 12 and 68 hundredths is greater than 12 and 8 hundredths because 68 is greater than 8. And she is incorrect. So remember, when you line up your digits in place value, it's supposed to be a 1, this will help you. This is where a lot of kids make errors, and they think like that. So 68 is bigger than 8, but that's not really 8. That's 8 tenths. So we can put an x of 0 in there. So now when you're looking at the values, you know that 80 is bigger than 68. And remember, we can add zeros to the end of decimals, and they do not change the value of the decimal, but it will help us visualize the which one's greater or less than. So it's a really good idea to do that. It's a good idea to write them on top of each other. So you realize it's not just a digit, it's a place value. It's very important to realize that. So on the next page is our guided practice at the top of the page, and then another example. Order the cockroaches from least to greatest. So what we do is we're going to write all the values in place value order on top of each other. And sometimes if you have a notebook, you can turn it sideways and use the lines on your notebook. You know, if you turn your notebook sideways, you can actually use the lines like a grid. So you can record the values in there. If you're one of those people that's kind of wiggly with their writing, you might want to do that just to make sure everything's really lined up nicely. So we line them all up, and we look to see, comparing the place values, we know there's a 3 in the ones place, so they're all equal in that area. So we have to go to the next largest place value, which is the tenths, and so on. So in order to write the numbers from least to greatest, we're going to make sure you understand what direction they want you to go in. So the first number you'll peel off is the smallest number, the least number. So now you only have 2 values to compare, and then you can get them all in place value order. So some strategies would be to turn your paper sideways. Always make sure you're writing them in place value order. Don't trust your eye. Do not trust your eyeball. And then down in the guided practice, scientists measured Madeira cockroach and found it to be 3 and 44 hundredths of a centimeter long. Toby said that the Madeira is shorter than the Oriental because 3 and 44 hundredths had fewer digits than 3 and 432 thousandths. And of course, we know he's not correct because the number of digits is irrelevant. It's place value. Digits are just telling you what is the value in that place value. So you really need to not be thinking of digits. You need to be thinking in terms of place value. And notice how I annexed a 0 there. So now I can tell you that this guy is longer. He's got, they both have 3s in the ones. They both have 4 in the tenths, but he's got 4 in the hundredths. And I added that 0 there to help my eye compare 440 and 432. And I'm allowed to do that after the decimal point. I can add zeros at the end. It helps me visualize my comparison. For number 2, again, I would write it off to the side on a piece of loose leaf or somewhere on the page where there's some extra room, or on a whiteboard if you have one at home. And we're going to see they both have 1s, they both have 6s, they both have 9s. So which one's greater, 2 or 7? The 7's going to be greater, so we write it the direction like that. Remember, the larger part of the greater than less than equal to is going to be eating the bigger number. The smaller part, the tip is pointing to the smaller number. For the next one, 7216 and 7203. They both have sevens, they both have twos. One is bigger than 0. I don't even have to look at the next digit because I know that 1/10 is bigger than 0/10. And ordering decimals from least to greatest, I have 3 values here. So I would write all the values. And I'm going to order from least to greatest. So I'm going to find the smaller value first. Well, I found that right away. So that is my smallest value, 5 and 540 thousandths. So now I have to compare the next two. They both have 5s in the ones, 6 in the tenths. And remember, I'm going smallest to largest. So the next smaller value is going to be 5 and 625 thousandths. And then the largest, 631. So we do the same thing for number 5. We're going to write them in place value order off to the side somewhere. This page doesn't have a lot of extra space on there, so you might want to be using a piece of loose leaf paper, your math notebook, a whiteboard, or something else where you can write them neatly off to the side. When you're writing them neatly, you should be numbering them too, so you can go back, especially if you have a parent looking at your work and they might want to look at it later on tonight. Or if you have a question about something and you want to send me a picture of it, like this might be a good one. As I'm writing them up in place value, I'm going to annex a 0 here because I want them all to have 3 digits in the thousandth place. So I'm going from smallest to largest. Well, I can tell this guy and this guy are smaller than the second and the third one. So now I'm going to compare this first one and the fourth one to see which is the smallest. They both have 0s in the ones place. They both have 6s in the tens place, but this one has a 7 and this one has a 9, so I know the first value is the smallest. The fourth value is the next smallest. So I'm going to get rid of those. I already addressed those. Now I'm going from smallest to largest, and be careful. Least to greatest is smallest to largest. Make sure you're in the right order. So which one of these two is smaller? Well, they both have a 1 in the ones place. This one has a 5. This one has a 3. So that one, I don't even have to go on. I could just stop at the tenths place. So that's what we're doing today. You can continue a little bit in the book, doing some independent practice. If you need the tutorial, I would highly recommend doing the buddy practice on your Pearson Interactive, Savvis site. The buddy practice will give you all those hints and pointers and tell you if you got things wrong, and then get to your quick check. And have a great day. Don't forget to watch the videos for extra help.